Stuart, you no doubt saw the scenes around Nottingham Forest's recent return to European football. What was that like for you to witness?
Well, it was really pleasing, to be quite honest with you, just to see the club back in Europe again. You know, I think the last time we were in there was, well, when I was playing. So that's too long, to be quite honest with you. Just shows the club are on an upward trend, which is great to see. An absolute credit to the Premier League, I think. And I think they've got the tools to go a long way in Europe this year.
We saw a real takeover in Seville on match day one. How special was that for you to see?
Yeah, well, you know, not just for an ex-player to see, but more so, there's a generation of fans here that have never seen Forest in Europe. They've heard the stories from their parents and grandparents about, you know, the back-to-back European Cup sagas and stuff like that, and but they've never seen it for themselves. And it's brilliant now for a new generation of fans to actually witness that and create new history for the club.
And just how important are the fans going to be, not just in this game, but across the European campaign?
I think what the Forest fans have done this year, I mean, I come back on a reasonably regular basis in regard to working media and covering games and the like. And I don't think in all the time that I played in the era that I did that I've known an atmosphere in the ground like I've heard of recent times. It just drives the team on. There's no doubt about that. And it's great to see, really, you know, full stadiums all the time, and the fans are the ones buoying it up, driving the team on, and they played a massive part. Don't underestimate their part in this journey that Forest are on at the moment.
And with Malmo to come later in November, of course, did that bring a smile to your face when you saw that was part of the schedule?
Yeah, an interesting one. It's obviously synonymous with the history of Forest. You know, I arrived probably 5 or 6 years after the original Malmo game, but that game is synonymous. It started the journey in Europe, if you like, and incredible. And the goal, and I was fortunate enough to play alongside the likes of John Robertson as well when I arrived, and he is just a cult figure at this football club, and it should bring back some brilliant memories for that generation of players as well, which is really important.
We'll come on to 1979 shortly, but what do you remember of the matches against Malmo in 95, 96?
Well, yeah, I even forgot that we played them on that cup run. Just really tight games, to be fair. The European campaign was new to us. We hadn't played in Europe because of Heysel and the like. And then we got the opportunity to play in Europe again. So we had some really tight fixtures. I think for the first 6 games, I don't think home and away we didn't concede a goal, which until we got to the quarter-final. But it was an eye-opener every time. And they were big occasions as well. I remember how heightened it was with the fans looking forward to these games because of the history with Malmo. I remember Larry Lloyd travelling with us. He was working for the local media. He travelled with us on the plane and stuff. And there was a real excitement about the likes of him and ex-players that had been around in that generation. And they were pleased to see another generation, as I'm pleased to see this generation back in Europe again.
If you can put it into words for us, what's it like running out of the City Ground for a fixture in Europe?
There's something a little bit special about it. There's no doubt about that. I think when you follow the history of what the club done at the back end of the 70s and 80s, you're acutely aware of the history that you've got to follow. That can either make you go under or inspire you. I think certainly it inspired us as a generation to try and emulate, at least on those nights, something that generation of players done, which will it ever get replicated again? Who knows? I hope so, but who knows? And just to run out, special evenings, night football as well under the lights, and with the fans, they'll be so buoyant and up for it. It'll be incredible.
Just coming back onto the Malmo fixture from 95, 96 now, was 1979 spoken about in the build-up to those games? What do you remember around that time?
Oh, 100% it was, yeah. I mean, we were acutely aware of that. We also, I think, played Malmo once or twice in pre-season games as well. Cloughy took us out to Sweden and we played Malmo, probably because of the links they had from the cup final a few years earlier. But we certainly talked about it. We're acutely aware of it. The players of my generation knew the history of the football club. You couldn't avoid the history of it. We followed it. But we were also proud to follow it as well and proud to be part of that history going forward.
With the travelling and the amount of games that come with the European campaign, does that almost bring the fans and players closer together, would you say?
I would think so, yeah, because a lot of the fans, make no mistake, will be going to all the away games on this campaign, which takes some doing financially and everything else that goes with that. So you appreciate it when fans get on the plane or travel by rail. I think it will be a really good campaign. I expect Forest to go quite deep into this competition. I really do, and I'll have my fingers crossed for them.
What lessons did you learn as a player playing in Europe?
Um, it turned out to be sort of almost like international football for me. So by the time I played in Europe for Forest for the first time round, it become almost an international fixture, if you like. You're representing not just your area in England, you're also representing England as a whole, as one of the English teams. So, and the style of plays varied a little bit from what you were used to on a Saturday to Saturday basis. So there was a lot of lessons to be learnt there, but I think just the togetherness and the enjoyment of travelling in Europe, I think, because we hadn't done it for so long, similar to this group of players, hadn't done it for so long as a football club because of the ban and everything that went with it and not qualifying for Europe. It was probably more special than probably playing in it every year, like the likes of Man City and Arsenal and the like.
And finally, we've heard so many stories about Brian Clough. Have you got one for us today, which maybe people haven't heard before?
I don't think I've got anything you haven't heard before. I'll tell you this one. I bumped into Pat Jennings, the Arsenal and Tottenham goalkeeper, a few years ago at the League Cup final. I was working at the League Cup final at Wembley, and he come over to me and said to me, I played at the City Ground in 1979. And he said, "You used to play for Clough, didn't you?" I said, "Yeah, I had 8 years with him." He said, "I played over there and I went to get the ball at the Trent end and place it down for a goal kick, and someone threw a dart out the crowd and it stuck in my forearm." And he said, "I went in at half time with the dart. I took it out, put it in my glove bag, went in, give it to my manager and said, 'Have you got any antiseptic? Someone's just thrown this at me and it's stuck in my arm.'" So they done that. Afterwards, the manager went in to see Cloughie and said, "Look, one of your supporters has just thrown this dart. You know, it's an absolute disgrace. What are you going to do about it?" Cloughie was a little bit non-committal. He said 3 days later, and he went into his breast pocket, bear in mind this was about 7 years ago at Wembley, he carries this letter around with him, Pat Jennings, and he gave it to me, and I opened it up and read it, and it had Nottingham Forest headed notepaper, and it said, "Dearest Pat, I have absolutely no sympathy for you whatsoever. Every time you come to the City Ground, you stop everything. It's no surprise you stop this dart. Lots of love, Brian." And I thought that probably sums him up in one, how we defused something, made a joke of it and whatever. And Pat carries it everywhere he goes now, and that's Cloughie for you.